everyone. My name is Bokser LeFebvre. I started my career as a litigator at a regional law firm, and later I transitioned to legal recruiting. I've worked in the recruiting industry, recruiting lateral associates for about a 9-year period. 6 of those years has been with Major Lindsey in Africa. And in that time, I've recruited primarily for the AM 100 and the AM 200 law firms, mid-sized firms, and boutiques, all in the New York City market. And I've also helped a number of individuals relocate to or outside of New York. And today, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about mid-sized firms and to share my knowledge and insight with you. So let's get started. So what is a mid-sized firm? So a mid-sized firm is a law firm between 15 and 350 lawyers. It can be regional in nature, or it can focus on a specific geographic location. It can also be a national platform with offices across the US, but just a smaller headcount comparative to large law firms. And the revenue, it can really vary quite dramatically. Boutiques differ from mid-sized firms in that generally they do have a smaller headcount. We're looking at a headcount of about less than 15 lawyers. And some boutiques are BigLaw spinoffs. And so they're extremely prestigious in nature. They're working with very sophisticated clients, and the cases are quite prestigious. And other boutiques, they operate more in the middle market space, and they actually have a low lawyer headcount as well. I would speak to career services at your law school to learn which mid-sized firms participate in OCI with them and explore those relationships. And then I would talk to a legal recruiter to help you identify some more mid-sized firms in your region that might not have relationships with your particular law school. Another option to consider, you can join different bar associations. You can use that as an opportunity to learn which mid-sized firms are a player in that area, in that specific practice area that's appealing to you. And you can network with the lawyers at those specific mid-sized firms and create opportunities for yourself. And lastly, I encourage you to review the vault rankings of mid-sized firms to learn more about who the major players are. How do mid-sized firms compare to large law firms? I think that there are several differences, including rate flexibility, attrition, compensation, and a lot of other factors. So let's talk a little bit about rate flexibility. So mid-sized firms, they compete with BigLaw, and they compete by offering rate flexibility. And I'm referring to an hourly rate most generally. So they either offer a more flexible or a lower hourly rate. And they also might offer alternative fee arrangements, which is something that we see more and more of in law firms. So I took a look at this data set from Thomson Reuters Legal Department Operational Index Survey, and I think you might find it interesting. But it demonstrates that the rate variability at mid-sized firms comparative to AM 100 firms, comparative to AM 200 firms. And it shows it year over year. And what you see is that there's dramatic differences in hourly rates. And what that means is mid-sized firms are really trying to compete by offering more rate flexibility, as I mentioned before. So in their recent report, Thomson Reuters said, quote, "There's strong evidence that clients have begun shifting their legal work to lower priced firms, such as mid-sized firms, and they're likely to continue doing so into the future as more and more corporate law departments look to do more with less." End quote. So I think that's really interesting to consider. Now let's talk a little bit about lower attrition. So another key difference between a large law firm model and a mid-sized firm is that mid-sized firms, they offer lower attrition. And what that means is that there's less associate turnover year after year. So there's more research from the Thomson Reuters Institute, and it states that mid-sized law firms make up a disproportionate percentage of what's considered stay law firms. And those are the firms that have lower rates of attorney turnover. So this is indicative of firms that are maybe more desirable places for attorneys to work. So if you're looking for a long-term home at a law firm, you want stability, you might be more interested in a mid-sized firm. You might be more likely to find that there because there is lower attrition at a mid-sized firm. So now let's talk about lower pay and raises. So a difference between the large firms and the mid-sized firms that might be particularly important to, junior lawyers who are just entering the workforce is that the mid-sized firms, they really offer smaller raises over time. And generally, the salaries are not at market rate compensation and definitely not at the scale that's set by the AM 100 firms. So Thomson Reuters mid-sized firm report shared metrics on salary increases that I thought were particularly enlightening. So the AmLaw 100 firms, they saw their associate compensation grow 15.3% in Q2 of 2022. And AmLaw 200 firms saw associate compensation grow by 12%. But the average mid-sized firm's compensation grew just by 7.4% in Q2 of 2022. So it shows you there are dramatic differences in terms of compensation and raises over time between BigLaw and mid-sized firms. And it's definitely something to consider. So what are the challenges associated with joining a mid-sized firm? They include less resources, different training, different brand recognition, and lower salaries. I want to start with resources. So when a firm has a leaner model, they might have less administrative support and less paralegal support. And so more of this work that's more administrative in nature, it might fall to junior associates. Also, mid-sized firms, they generally have fewer junior associates on staff. So the junior associate work, it might fall to associates who are not junior, who might be mid-level or senior. The other big difference related to resources is that you might see more scrutiny regarding allocation of financial resources. There might be less resources offered for conferences or marketing or maybe different forms of business development. So these are all things that we can weigh when evaluating the resources at a mid-sized firm. Now let's talk a little bit about the differences related to training. So mid-sized firms, they may offer more hands-on responsibility, which really is a form of like on-the-ground training, informal training. And you're likely to get it much earlier in your career. But mid-sized firms, they might have less formal training programs in place, and they're less likely to offer practice area rotations. So if you're looking for more of a formal training environment, you're less likely to find it in a mid-sized firm. But if you prefer more of an informal training environment, you're more likely to find that at a mid-sized firm. Now let's talk a little bit about brand. So some mid-sized firms are regional or national in nature, and they have less of a global or national kind of brand awareness to compete against the larger firms for work or for clients, especially that more elite and sophisticated work. So that is a big difference in terms of brand awareness. And another big difference is that if you are seeking to go in-house one day and you're trying to compete for the most competitive and elite and best paying in-house job, brand does matter. And large law firms are most likely a better platform for you to compete for those type of in-house jobs. But if in-house is not necessarily the trajectory that you see your career going in, then this is not necessarily a factor that you need to weigh. There are so many benefits to joining a mid-sized firm, so I want to talk about that next. So what are the benefits? More hands-on experience, lean staffing, client contact, and you're developing core skills that might be useful to you should you want to transition to a large law firm one day. So let's start by talking about hands-on experience. So as an associate, you're more likely to get hands-on experience earlier in your career at a mid-sized firm. And if you're interested in getting more drafting experience, or perhaps you want to be able to argue a motion in court or attend, various conferences in court, or perhaps you want to get deposition experience earlier in your career, whether it's, defending or taking a deposition. Mid-sized firms are more likely a better platform for you in terms of getting that type of experience much sooner in your career. Another benefit to joining a mid-sized firm is that generally they have a much more leanly staffed model than large law firms. So you can anticipate a staffing model of one partner to one associate, or one partner, either a senior or mid-level associate, and one junior. So this type of lean staffing model, it really lends itself again to getting more hands-on responsibility in your career, which is a really great form of training and is supported by a lean staffing model. So another benefit of a mid-sized firm is that you're likely to get client contact earlier in your career. And again, this also ties into lean staffing. So associates, they really find that client contact is meaningful to them. They feel connected to the work that they do because they have client contact. And it's also really beneficial to them in terms of training. Managing a client relationship, it's a really important skill set. And it's one that people really enjoy developing. So if you're eager for client contact, you're more likely to get it at a mid-sized firm. So lastly, another benefit of joining a mid-sized firm platform is that it can be an excellent stepping stone to go to a large law firm one day, but only if you get skills in a specific practice area, which is in demand at a large law firm. We see large law firms recruiting out of mid-sized firms in certain key practice areas. And generally, that's where there's insufficient talent within BigLaw to meet demand. So what are these key practice areas so that you can kind of keep that in mind should this be aligned with your goals? It's corporate, and that includes finance, capital markets, mergers and acquisitions, and structured finance. Also, real estate finance or real estate dirt, which is a combination of acquisitions, sales, and leasing. Then bankruptcy and restructuring, both the litigation and corporate skill set within this space. Labor and employment is also a very interesting one. And tax. And when I say tax, I really mean more transactional tax, just corporate support. So everyone, that ends my discussion today around mid-sized firms. And I really hope that you found this information interesting and enlightening. I really appreciated having the opportunity to share this background with you today. And I wish you the best of luck. And thank you for tuning in. Bye.